Okay, right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillor members and members of the public joining us on the YouTube stream. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Biddulph Town Hall Town Council Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 20th of January 2026. Right, to start the meeting, I'd like to read the official disclaimer. This meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Biddulph Town Council YouTube page. The aim is that decision-making should be transparent and in the public domain, which will involve more of our community in local democracy. By being in this council chamber, you are consenting to being recorded and for your image to be added to YouTube. The images and sound may be used for training purposes. Any views expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Biddulph Town Council. Please view the guidance on recording in public meetings policy if you need more information. Thank you very much. Item 52 on the agenda, apologies and approval of any substitute members. Do we have any apologies?
Apology from Councillor Smith and no substitute members.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 50. Yes,
notification at 5:15 that Dave Brownlove is delayed at work and he may not be able to attend. And could he please forward his apologies if he doesn't make it for the end?
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Yates. So, moving on to item 53, declarations of interest. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary interests and dispensations, any of the items on the agenda this evening? Any other interests to declare? If as we go through and the planning applications come through, you remember that you do actually know somebody, then please feel free to make them comment at the time. Okay, so moving on to minutes of the previous meeting, which is the minutes of the planning committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 18th of November. These have been to town council, so I just need a proposer and seconder. We're happy to receive these as being a true and accurate record of the meeting. So, Councillor Redfern and Councillor Lawton, have a show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. If you just talk amongst yourselves for a second while I just sign these off. Thank you. Okay, right. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 55, standing agenda item. Consider any proposed sites for local listing. Officer.
I've got no new ones. Unless anybody else is
anyone in the
on something?
Anyone on the committee have any other sites they'd like to propose for local listing? Take that as a no. Okay. To confirm the planning recommendation submitted to the Staffordshire Moorlands District Council in December 2025.
Yes, members have had those by email.
Yeah, you had all those by email. Are we all happy with those? Yeah. Can I have a proposer and a second? Proposed Councillor Hawley, second Councillor Yates. Have a show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the substantive issue for this evening, planning applications that have been submitted. We have 4 applications that were submitted in advance of the there will be a further one later. So first application is SMD 2025-0523 from Eggerich Care Limited for number 1 the Parklands, Biddulph Moor. It's a change of use application from a dwelling house class C3 to a care home for children use class 2 with associated works. There was no pre-application advice. It is not in the green belt and BNG is not applicable for de minimis size exemptions. So essentially there are no modifications proposed to the existing property, but it's a change of use from a residential dwelling to a care home for up to 3 children with mild to moderate learning difficulties, SES, special educational needs, behavioural challenges and or mild disabilities, and there's landscaping changes to facilitate access to additional parking. Obviously, there are no proposed external changes, so there are no materials other than the current red brick garage will be proposed to be rendered. So in terms of the design access statements that have been provided, the original application proposed stated there were 4 existing parking spaces that will all be retained. However, on the plans, the current situation shows only 3, with 4 in the new location. So just to make it all clear, this is the where we're talking about parklands on the edge of Biddulph Moor. I think I just have a quick. So this is the proposed, there will be the proposals that will be 4 here. This is on account, I think, of the property now has 4 bedrooms, which would be required. The C2 standards for SMDC car parking define that there should be 1 space per permanent member of staff, plus 1 additional space for temporary members of staff, plus 1 for effectively for visitors. That accounts for the 4. The practical access to this is unclear from the design, because there is nothing to do specified in terms of additional lowering of the curb in front of the property. It was originally a 2-bedroom bungalow that had been extended previously on the ground floor and with a loft conversion with dormers to add 2 additional rooms, one of which was an ensuite. The most recent refurbishment, obviously not requiring planning permission because it was all within permitted development, was to reorder the interior and convert the garage to an office with WC. There is a possibility here that the supporting statement defines that there will be additional employment. This will bring additional employment to the village, 2.5 full-time equivalents on a shift system, providing 24-hour care. Looking at the neighbourhood plan policies, I think the 2 that potentially are impacted is urban edge. And that's my concern, is that there's no clear definition of what they're going to be doing for the edge treatment. And there's 2 public realm car parking and movement. And the concern on that is that the plans do not show any clear definition for an ambulance space. In the statement, there is an argument that because it should only require ambulance visits for emergency, as any normal domestic dwelling, then the ambulance can park on the street. This is quite a controversial application, I believe. There have been 14, at my last looking, there were 14 registered objections to the site. I'm aware that there are other objections and comments that were not registered on the site at our last time of looking. We have been in communication, I believe, both Councillor Jones and myself, with the planning department to ensure that all the resident complaints or comments are actually noted on the site. At this moment in time, as I say, I'm concerned about NE2 because of the boundary landscaping to be removed to facilitate the additional parking. There's 2 because there's no space for the emergency vehicle. As I say, actually, there are 20 objections. I lied. There were 14 initially. Now there are 20 objections, which cite a number of things: parking, lack of facilities for children in the village, minimal public transport, negative impact on the community, loss of elderly retiree housing, antisocial behaviour concerns, inappropriate location, impact on amenity for existing elderly residents. And there is also a specific request from a member of the public for the planning committee to review it rather than being delegated decision. So at this point, before I take Councillor Jones and Councillor Hawley, who are the 2 ward councillors, the recommendation at this point would be to refer it to the planning office, but to recommend planning committee review, highlighting some of the what I believe are valid neighbours' concerns, specifically the appropriateness of the location and the loss of residential dwelling in the village. I've got Councillor Jones, Councillor Hawley, and then Councillor Rogers. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One or 2 of the statements that you read out, I've got a little bit of issue with. I don't understand how it's going to create any employment for the village. It is going to create a couple of jobs, but I can't see there being people that live in the village. The ambulance space is just noise, really. Again, as you said, it's got the same access to an ambulance vehicle, emergency access as any other domestic dwelling. It's not like we're talking about 50 residents here. I have some issues over this, maybe the suitability for teenagers, only because there's no way off the moor really for teenagers to get anywhere, get back. Transport provision off and on the moor out of hours is pretty poor. But I've already called it into committee. And I'm quite happy for you to go with your recommendation that we'd just refer it to let the planning committee mull it over and sort it out at leak. I've no sort of preference either way as to whether it gets approved or not, quite frankly. Nobody has complained directly to me about the application per se. I've seen it. I was copied onto an email where somebody was a bit worried about the quality of the work for the conversion that's being done, but that's not a planning issue anyway. That's building reg. So I don't know what the chat has been on social media or anything like that, but nobody has approached me directly to oppose it. I've seen the representations on the website, and I have to say most of those objections were not based on any sort of planning basis. It was just I think it's a fear of the unknown with a lot of people, and it's understandable. It's understandable. But I think we should let it go through proper planning process at link to committee. I've already called it in. So
Thank you very much for
the
that,
planning committee, and anybody that wants to object can go along and say the piece and have the 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That was my thought on this, is that we should put it into the public domain to allow people to make the comments in the committee. But thank you for that.
I say, and anybody that wants to go to the planning committee at leak and say their 5 minutes, then they can put the name down to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Hawley.
Yeah, when I looked last night, there've been 22 objections.
I've not looked at it since I sent these into the office.
Obviously going over what you'd already said, but I mean, the things that they're covering is traffic, parking and highway safety. They believe there's going to be an increase in traffic, probably will be. I'm interested that why we haven't had any sort of highways comments on this. One would have thought that given what they're doing, there should be something. Noise disturbance and impact on the residential amenity. It's a quiet cul-de-sac with a high proportion of elderly residents. The concern of antisocial behaviour, the suitability of the location and supervision, impact on property values. That is certainly nothing to do with a planning issue. Previous scrutiny and community backlash. This basically is people have been looking at similar facilities that have been operated by the applicant, and it's a highlighted community backlash and operational concerns. There's lack of information. What is the age range of the children? What are the visiting schedules? Safeguarding measures? As you've already said, it should go to the planning committee, which Councillor Jones has activated. The lack of activities on Biddulph Moor for the children, and also the lack of public transport for the getting anywhere. Basically, they're saying the size of property is not big enough. The late request for consultation, which I gathered you actually did something about, and it's actually been put back.
They extended the consultation period to the
extended the
27th of January, something like that.
Yes. As a result of it being published immediately prior to Christmas, over the Christmas break, representations from the ward councillor led to them, the planning authority, to actually extend it to give a reasonable time for input of feedback.
Yeah, there's been concern raised over the heating systems. They are not mentioned, and apparently, given that this type of dwelling, there should be something in there.
I think that's the one of the comments that was raised by the email that I received that Councillor Jones has also seen regarding the standard of the work, which has now been referred to building regulations.
Building regulations.
So that's not a planning issue. That's a
some of the
being dealt with.
concerns as opposed to whether there's no enclosed garden space if you've got young children there. Apparently, the National Planning Policy Framework says that services should be accessed easily, and that it's not, you can't exactly say that on Biddulph Moor that services are easily accessed. And obviously concerns about the internal work which has been already started. Now, I sort of look at this and I don't see any valid planning concerns, but there are concerns, and I think these concerns should be addressed. And obviously, if it goes to a full planning committee, then I would expect that these concerns should be highlighted. Exactly. Basically, the residents are concerned about this. I personally, on a planning view, can't see any reason why it shouldn't be approved. But there are basically the concerns of the local residents, and I think they may have to be taken into consideration.
I think that's the general basis of the recommendation, is that there are no the planning concerns. There may be some superficial ones, but they'd be only minor issues, and they're very much up for interpretation by the planning officer. So I think that's what we want to see.
And I would say that potentially the recommendation, as you say, that effectively it should be reviewed and concerns should be taken into account and basically looked at, really.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. It's always a strange one. I mean, 22 objections. The objections, I don't want it, isn't planning application issue, unfortunately. What concerns me a little tiny bit, it says 24-hour care. If somebody's got to have 24-hour care, and people are saying about antisocial behaviour, surely if there's somebody under 24-hour care, they can't just go wandering the streets on their own without supervision.
It is a residential home, and therefore it's effectively 24-hour occupation.
But we don't know what type of person,
and we wouldn't.
If they got problems.
That would not come to a planning issue, and that would also be a safeguarding issue. And
I'm saying about the antisocial.
Cannot inquire into that.
I'm just again pushing the point. If it's a 24-hour care, and obviously when they leave that care, they can't just say, "Off you go, come if you want." Got to be supervised, surely.
Okay, right. I've got Councillor Lawton and then Councillor Redfern. Councillor Lawton.
My question, it's a question really for clarification, centres around this 24-hour care. Is it going to be provided, is the staff going to be residential?
Yes.
Right. So there won't be staff changeover points 2 or 3 times a day? If there were, the parking would be inadequate because the new staff arrive in cars before the old ones leave to provide continuity. And that was my point.
The statement provided with the application says that there will be 2 shifts. So there will be a shift changeover. There will be 4 parking spaces for the 2 permanent members of staff. There is a 3rd member of staff who is part-time who visits the site, and that's why they need to have 4 spaces. So they're complying with the planning, the district council parking requirements for a C2 care home use.
Takes account of the changeover and someone arriving before the predecessor departs.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Redfern.
Yes, you mentioned, first of all, question really. You mentioned at the beginning, what was the name of the company?
Egret Care Limited.
What's that spelled?
EGRET.
Egret Care
Small.
Limited.
Egret Care Limited.
Egret Care Limited. It's about, yes, it's
What is just a general point, and it has been made, I know, a number of times, but I think it is worth repeating. We are getting more and more of these applications and have been doing some years now in all different parts of the moorlands. And the point has often been made that some of the places that have been put forward are not really suitable, particularly for young people. I think the same point's been made here. I mean, a lot of these companies are the very companies that we keep hearing about to demanding very high amounts of fees for looking after these children because it is an expensive business. But it's amazing how they seem to be able quite easily to acquire these properties, so they must have some quite substantial reserves behind them. And of course, a number of these companies exist within a much larger corporate framework of hedge funds and all the rest of it. So I think it's really not for this planning committee, but I think nationally there has to be some thought given to how we provide this care long term, rather than this.
Yeah, I understand that issue. I say that is, as you say, that is not for this planning committee to recognise your concern. I think many of us share the concerns regarding the social care system, but obviously not for this planning committee. Does anyone else who wanted to raise any other comments? At the moment, we have a proposal to refer to the planning officer. Oh, Sorry, Councillor Hawley, coming back. Yes.
Make another point. I mean, probably with my neighbourhood plan hat on more than
Yes.
one of the things in terms of the local plan is obviously numbers of houses. And effectively, we are losing a residential dwelling. And that does concern me somewhat.
That I think is in my assessment of it, that is the only planning consideration that I think I would be concerned about, would be the loss of a retiree residential dwelling in Biddulph of the type that is prevalent in Biddulph, and at the moment we don't see any more being built. So that would be my concern, which is why I think it needs to be referred, and we need to highlight the issues that have been raised, but to defer the planning the decision to the planning officer in light of the amount of public interest. And I think Councillor Jones was seconding that when
I've called it into committee anyway.
Called it in.
We should let it run its course. I mean, we're only advisory anyway, as you chair, and the decision will be made at week. And I think we have to let the decision be made at week.
Can I have a show of hands? Are we all happy with that proposal? Right. So thank you. So in that case, so the recommendation is to refer to the planning officer with it being called in to the planning committee for decision by the committee rather than by the delegated decision.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Close that one down and move on to our next application, which is, I'm taking two applications here together, which is SMD 2025-0538 and 0539. These both relate to the same property. One is a listed building consent and the other is the actual application for the installation of 10 solar PV panels to be fitted onto the south-facing roof. The applicant is Mr. Robert Metcalf and Heidi Judge of 2 Overton Hall, Barnes, Overton Road, Congleton, Staffordshire. There was no pre-application advice. It is in the green belt. BNG isn't applicable because it's a householder application. It's essentially an application for consent and installation of solar panels on a grade 2 listed building, fitting panels over the existing roof to allow reversal if time and technology render them redundant. Materials are external fitment of black/dark matte solar panels over an existing retained blue plain tiled roof. In terms of the justification and statements provided, the location of the property is remote. Let's just find it on our map. Right, there we go. Right. This is the location. People may be aware of the location on Overton Road. It's a remote, property remote, dependent on electricity, mains electricity for communication, and it's serviced by overhead power lines, as a lot of the more remote areas of Biddulph North are, which suffers frequent power outages in winter. It has poor satellite mobile phone coverage. The installation of solar PV and battery storage would provide an environmentally sustainable solution. The surrounding trees on the property make ground mounted and unsuitable, and hence the proposal to mount it on the southern aspect of the roof. Historic England have been consulted, and while not offering advice, have referred the applicant to a specialist conservation advisors. I don't believe that any of the neighbourhood plan policies are impacted by this. My additional comments on it, as I say, I don't think any of the neighbourhood plan policies apply. The design's a standard component of similar colour to the existing dark existing roof tiles, and due to the surrounding trees, having looked at it from Google Maps street view, you can't see the property at all. It's surrounded by trees, so it wouldn't be visible from outside the boundary of the property. I would also suggest that the absence of any adverse comment from Historic England, who are notorious in terms of jumping on things, while not implying approval, may be taken as a tacit acceptance of some of the merits of the scheme. And I think it also will be in line with the net zero aspirations of the district and should not be discouraged. Therefore, my recommendation at this stage would be to make no adverse comments, referring to the planning officer, but suggest that support for an environmentally responsible solution to providing addressing erratic rural power supplies might be encouraged. I've got Councillor Jones, Councillor Hawley, Councillor Yates. So, Councillor Jones, I think your hand went up first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, you know, we both know, Chair, don't we, how picky and awkward HE can be. And if they're happy, then that'll do for me. And it's, you know, it's a laudable project, environmentally friendly project. So NAC, I'm quite happy with that, Chair. I support that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hawley.
Yeah, what I'm surprised is, okay, Historic England, but it's actually up to the Conservation Officer to actually make the decision. And basically, there's no comment from him at the moment. And is he actually going to make any comment? And it is his responsibility. Effectively, Historic England can make a comment, but it is actually the Conservation Officer can actually pull the plug on it. So, I mean, I would sort of say that we should be looking for him to make sort of, him or her, to make some sort of comment on this.
Okay, we can add that to the recommendation that the Conservation Officer should be consulted in this. Happy to do that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Yates.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you want me to pull up a picture of the location, or have you got it on your?
No, I know where it is. I'm familiar with that. Photos in front of it.
Yes. It's the river running down the river, down the road.
You know, notwithstanding the Historic England Conservation Officer, which is quite right, they've been listed building, it's extremely well shielded by the trees and the hedgerow and relatively high walls in front of it. I doubt many people actually know there's a building there, never mind. So potential solar panels on the building. I see the fact that they're stressing the intermittent power, whatever, that needs a specific system, which are not the common solar panel systems, which you put there, as we probably know. But yeah, I fully support this. It's an ideal place to have it. It's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Any other comments on this application? Are we happy then? In that case, I think to send it with no adverse comments, referring to the planning officer and to the conservation officer, but stressing our support for the environmentally responsible solution in this area. So I'm proposing that. Can we have a second for that?
Yeah.
Councillor Jones. Show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on. This is an interest. This is an interesting one. Go up to here. This is SMD 2025-0481. Mr. Bloor of Willow Property and Development Limited. This is for the Old School Canteen, Shepherd Street, Biddulph. If you can find Shepherd Street, Biddulph.
Chippy.
It is actually next door to the Chippy.
Sustainable development then.
Absolutely. Right. We'll just find somewhere randomly in Shepherd Street. There we go. Right. This is the location here. Okay, so the elevations. Right. Okay, so this is to the proposed element is to remove the remains of the existing building and hard landscaping and the construction of 5 new urban townhouses. There's no pre-application advice. It's not in the green belt. It's stating that BNG is not applicable because of the size of the site. However, when we go through it, you'll see that there will actually be a significant gain in biodiversity from the proposed designs. So, we're not looking at the right one there, are we? All inside. I apologise. Yeah, that's the one. Right. Okay. So the proposal is to demolish an unroofed derelict commercial building, the Old School Canteen. The roof has been taken off this because it was asbestos. That's also no longer has a roof, although the pictures will show that it does have, and replacing it with 5 3-storey, 3-bedroom townhouses with private and visitor parking. They're removing an existing red brick building, and the new property will be constructed with smooth red facing brick, smooth grey concrete tiled roofs, white UPVC windows and doors, black UPVC rainwater and guttering. The vehicle access in front of the properties is proposed to be block paving, replacing the tarmac Adam, which covers the whole of the site at present. In terms of design and access statements, the new development is designed to be sympathetic in scale, style and materials to the existing urban landscape. The majority of the landscape around Shepherd Street are red brick terraced properties. There are a number of those in that area. It's with dedicated block paving for parking for the properties with additional tarmac Adam parking to the side of the development for visitors. There are private rear gardens with paving, lawn and planting, which would provide a degree of green space that currently isn't on the site. These are stated as being above the minimum requirement for urban yard private spaces, but they are proposing that permitted development right to be removed as a planning condition part of the approval. There's an ecological report and a BNG exemption letter, which specifies that the provision of bird and bat boxes to the site with new planted areas on site. Currently, it's all hard standing and an unroofed derelict building. It's unsuitable for bat and bird habitation. It also specifies the use of low-level LED lighting directed downwards and away from existing retained trees and boundaries. The energy statement provided specifies air source heat pumps and high thermal efficiency materials, and they identify solar PV panels as being an option to meet a higher energy standard if required. The neighbourhood plan policies, which I believe are impacted by this, and I believe they're all met, are the natural environment features, NE1, and that's basically because they're providing additional wildlife habitats. HOU1 and HOU2, high environmental performance and potentially affordable homes, so they would meet two of the criteria for housing. Sustainable drainage, the fact that they're replacing non-porous surfaces with porous surfaces, I think would be a benefit. And DES 1 and DES 2, the fact that it's a sympathetic design and it's providing adequate off-road parking. My recommendation for this at the moment would be to approve it with conditions, and the conditions as per the recommendations of the ecological report to provide the wildlife habitats, and also additional recommendation that solar PV panels be installed to maximise environmental efficiency. I would also suggest they should consider porous surfaces for the visitor parking, additional parking areas as well. I think Councillor Jones had a hand, Councillor Hawley, Councillor Yates, Councillor Rogers. So running around the room in that order, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, it won't be difficult to get a positive BNG on that, would it? Because it's all concrete and tarmac at the moment.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And it has been a mess for a long time, and I welcome the fact that it's going to be developed. But what does concern me a little bit is that they're 3-storey houses. They're quite high, they are. They're going to dominate that street scene. It's not a particularly wide road. All the houses surrounding are semi-detached, normal 2-storey houses. And I just fear it. And 5 on that site as well. I'm just trying to picture the site in my head. 5 seems a lot, and that's probably why it's all this money. I think more appropriate would be to have maybe 4 2-storey houses rather than 5 3-storey houses. I think that's going to be a hell of a block.
I think what we should bear in mind is when I state they are 3-storey houses, but they are with a dormer at the top. So the apex of the house effectively represents
a 40-foot grid pitch.
3rd story. Okay, I'm absolutely.
I just think it's going to be over. I consider it slightly overdevelopment for that site, Chair. Personally, I'll leave it to the ward councillors to argue the case. But in my personal opinion, I think that's going to be. It's going to be very, very intimidating. Very over. It's facing west as well, I think, or thereabouts.
I can't.
It's going to shadow the street. It's going to be it's going to look like a prison block. Personally, that's just my. I can't give any valid planning reasons. That's just my personal take on it, Chair.
Okay, right. Thank you. So your concern essentially is that the dominant nature of 3. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawley.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking in terms of the heating. I mean, obviously they're talking about heat pumps. I I presume then if they're not going to have heat pumps, it will be electric heating. Is that right?
They're air source heat pump.
I mean, it is an option, it is an option, not necessarily, that's the way they go.
This is the site we're looking at. Those are the adjacent buildings, in terms of your comment, Councillor Jones, and the facing buildings across the way. Sorry, Councillor Lane.
Yeah, I was going to say that basically, you know, the heat pumps are an option, so they aren't definitely going to go with heat pumps.
They quite clearly state in their plans that they will be using air source heat pumps.
You sure about it? I read it, and I'm sure they said it was an option.
The solar,
read the planning statement. It says it's an option.
The solar panels were stated as being an option, but it was said that the heating would be by air source heat pump. I think we would be within the recommendation is that those high efficiency, sustainable options should be conditioned on the properties.
I mean, that's what I'm looking at basically here. That obviously, if you're building new houses, you've got to use the new facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Hawley. Councillor Yates.
Yeah, a couple of things. One on picked up. Biodiversity net gain. Including the title, net gain. It's just a concrete derelict part. I mean, net gain would be a couple of potted plants to be fair. It's good that they've actually.
I think
in address of that.
I think Councillor Yates, the comment for the exemption is that because there's zero there at the point, there's no way of judging what the net gain would be. Yes.
The other thing is, the other slight concern, and in some respects, Mr. Opportunity, I'm always conscious that businesses operate. If you look at the wider picture from above, there is a yard behind, which is,
Okay.
you know, not perhaps in keeping nowadays with a residential area. It would in an ideal world, you're looking for a complete scheme for the back as well as the front. And the fact that there isn't doesn't mean to say that
It won't be.
5 years, 10 years, whenever, you know, something will happen to cause that scheme to the back to be the scheme. And I'm a little bit concerned about the access to the back if that was ever to come forward as a change use. I'm worried about the fact that there's 5 houses blocking in the potential access to the potential future use of the land behind. It does wrong. I mean, it is compromised at the moment, but this would certainly lock in that compromising. If it was a whole place solution scheme, then obviously to be designed slightly differently, I think. And that's the only concern I've got.
Let me just have a look and see if with this planning one here, if we've got a proposed block plan, see if that actually gives us a. No, that's the wrong one again. Right, I apologise.
Location plan.
Because I'm sure if you're putting 5 houses there, if the other side to the back becomes available for development, somebody looking at the size, somebody be looking at perhaps 10 houses, 12 houses there, I'm sure there would be a specification to say what the access would have to be, and it just doesn't seem to be there.
So that is the site plan, the location plan, essentially, in terms of that's the current building, and the footprint, including the parking area here, effectively matches the footprint of the existing building. So there potentially is a wider access there for access back if you take away those parking spaces.
It wouldn't, because they'd be owned by the.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure of the specific. I think these are the owned spaces at the front allocated to the properties. Those are additional spaces at the side. So there may be some
occasion on that, because I do think you're effectively sterilising future development for the site, which is, you know, there's a demand for housing, and there's demand for, ideally, the house needs to go into the right space, which is the urban space.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody was redeveloping a concrete pad or an old derelict yard, you're going to get less pushback than developing a field within an urban space or open field.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I understand. So essentially, there's a concern regarding closing off future development for the area behind, and we should highlight that as a potential issue. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Rogers, I've got Councillor Hopkins, and now I've got Councillor Lawton. Well, so, okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, actually, it's just said a lot without going to say, to be quite honest. But if you go on the street scene again for me, on the street view,
There you go, that one.
then go down to the ground where the entry is at the side of the chip shop. Turn left,
That's okay, on
left again.
Nothing left. There you go.
That there,
Yeah.
that needs to be clarified, as Nigel was saying, basically. Who's got the rightful ownership of that? Because it's shared ownership. It's solar. I think it's got to be stipulated. Where's that?
I'm not entirely sure that that's relevant necessarily to this particular.
It is, because if they said we own this and we're going to close it.
I think Councillor Yates had already raised the concern regarding the concern that we could close off development because of that limited access. So if we highlight that as a comment, then I think that covers that one.
Yeah, it needs to, the ownership of that needs to be established. Because the people who are developing the 5, if they say, well, we own this as well, we can do what we want with it. It's got to be clarified and stop planning.
That area there is not within the curtain
That was
of the development site, and therefore is not specifically relevant to this application.
It says if you're going to affect that access.
Yeah, I think we've highlighted the concern, I think. So I think that's probably going to be sufficient. So, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah. I think I'd like to say that the parking around that area is an absolute nightmare when people have fish and chips, because the road is very narrow. And I've noticed on social media that there's been complaints about people parking inconsiderably in that area there.
Yes.
So that's one of my concerns. But then you're introducing all these extra cars coming onto in and out of the road.
I can understand that, and I think if we looking back at the plan, it's designated off-road parking for the properties, but I recognise what you're saying is that this area currently here in front of the fence where people can park, they will not be able to park because that'll be people's drives going for future.
Problems elsewhere.
So in that case, do we also want to put a comment in there regarding concern regarding parking congestion in the area?
And I think I echo Councillor Hawley's comments about the height of the building. I think they're going to be very imposing. I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like with the street view, but you can't get any worse, can it?
No. Yes, I think we've got a very low bar. We're setting a very low bar here in terms of improvement, aren't we? Let's be honest. Okay, right.
Another thing is somebody had an application in before, haven't they?
I'm not aware of that, but we can check on the site.
On time.
Right. Okay.
What time go on to?
That's the last one. Change.
There are. Right. Okay. We've got units 1 and 2 Shepherd Street. There was an application in 2000. A couple of applications in 2004. Sorry, conditions. Use of existing building. I don't think there's anything there in terms of any development, change of use. No, you're right. There you go, 2017. Previous application 5 3-bedroom terraced urban houses, and that was approved. Yeah. So there is a previous. I think there's now effectively an expired planning permission for a similar development that was previously approved, and that perhaps would provide some weight to recommending approval, but subject to conditions and highlighting concerns. Right. Councillor Lawton, I think you were the last speaker on this.
I'd like to pick up on a point made. I think it was Councillor Jones who mentioned the height of these buildings. The fact it's 3-storey or 2-storey plus a third in the roof. You alluded, Chairman, to them being in the vicinity of terraced houses. They are in Lower Shepherd Street, but in the immediate vicinity and more relevantly, directly opposite them, they are not. You know, it's Cole Street interwar council housing. And arguably, what's being proposed now is less satisfactory than the design of those houses years ago. And I think could impose on the view opposite. I know the current view is bad because of the dereliction of the site, but it has been a single story site. And now you're going from one extreme to the other. And I've just got a little bit of misgiving about it. I would imagine that if this sort of application were put in some other locations, there'd be clear and strong objection to the 3 stories. And I'd simply like to sort of support that thought.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lawton. I've got Councillor Jones and Councillor Hawley coming back again for the second time, gentlemen.
Just very quickly, I agree with what the Mayor's just said. And that's what I said earlier, 5 seems a bit excessive. 3 stories seems a bit excessive. If it was a pair of semis matching what's there, then I'd be more inclined to put my weight behind it, really. But I just think it's slightly overdevelopment for that particular site, personally, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawley, did you want to add anything new?
Right, it's just sort of going back to when we first started the Neighbourhood Plan. We were looking at sites for development within Biddulph. And that, plus the Woodyard, which we're behind, was actually one of the sites that came up. Now, the thing, sort of thinking about it now, is if you build 5 houses across the front, you've got a major problem in actually accessing the back, because that road is not wide enough to the size of development you would put behind it. And so I'm sort of thinking that really what they should be looking at is actually a whole development which takes in the back as well, rather than just the front.
I think
just keep going. Because the thing is, once you do that, you're cutting out the back. And as far as I can see, what we'll be looking at is numbers of houses in Biddulph. And what you're going to do is stop them building on the back.
I
think that to be a valid reason.
So I think that's exactly the point that Councillor Yates made in terms of he was concerned about closing off the development of the room up the rear of the site effectively by blocking at the front. So that's essentially exactly what Councillor Yates said. Councillor Yates is going to come back and correct me on that, aren't you? Now?
No, that's absolutely right. It is the fact that is an obvious development site to provide houses in Biddulph in a non-sensitive area, within the urban area. I can imagine that there's 2 parts of ownership. The ownership of the front building and the ownership of the yard are completely different. And I can imagine one's got development in mind, the other one's got running his business in mind, so to speak. I'd like to think if there could be some coming together, the chap who's got the business, Staffordshire Moorlands District Council, would actively help him to relocate that business. I've got no doubts about that. Within Biddulph, we've got plans for that. Economic development is very important. You don't want to lose businesses, but it is an opportunity which maybe now and not available in the future for the very reasons that myself and Councillor Hawley have stated. I struggle to think that the site behind is bigger. Based on five houses at the front, you're probably looking at up to a dozen houses at the back. I'm not prejudging what applications come through. You're not going to have 24 hours ingress.
Okay.
Councillor
Yates.
Narrow road.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm conscious that we are actually running quite late now for this meeting, but so I think we're going over the same ground. But so I think in that case we have choices before us in terms of what we can recommend. We're obviously not the planning authority. We can only make a suggestion. So at the moment, the recommendation was for approval with conditions and highlighting the concerns regarding closing off the development. Does anybody want to propose something different in terms of either making no comment or recommending refusal?
I think it's overdevelopment, Chair. I think it's too many, too high in that environment. It's inappropriate for that. But
So are you?
I haven't got a seconder for that.
So I'm just saying. So are you effectively, Councillor Jones? Are you suggesting that we recommend refusal on the grounds of overdevelopment, highlighting the concerns of closing off development and the height?
Concerns that it's inappropriate overdevelopment. I welcome the development per se, but I think 4 2-story houses would be more appropriate. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, so essentially, do we have a second for yes, Councillor?
I'd like to second that.
Okay, so essentially, I'm I'm ambivalent about it. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think we recommending approval on the grounds that we need more housing development in Biddulph. But if the concern is that this is overdevelopment and it's too much in too small a space, then I'm happy to go with the proposal from Councillor Jones to recommend refusal. While we
I recommend refusal, Chair. I'm saying we have concerns that it's slightly overdevelopment. That's all it is.
okay.
I recommend, as I've said many times, we can't approve, we can't.
No, all we can do is
express concern.
Yes,
That's what I'm doing.
we can make as a consulted body, we can make recommendations on the grounds of our own local priorities from the neighbourhood plan. So, Councillor Hawley.
Well, if we are expressing concerns, then we should be expressing concern that it's going to block out
Yes.
being able to develop.
Oh, that's obviously that's in as well.
So in that case, essentially, we're neither recommending approval nor refusal. We're referring it to the planning officer, highlighting our concerns regarding the overdevelopment of the site and the potential to block out further development of the back of the property. Is that essentially what are we all happy with that as a compromise statement?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So we propose that. We have a second for that. Okay, yes, Councillor, or second. So we're not making any recommendations specifically with regard to approval or refusal, but we are highlighting our concerns regarding the overdevelopment of this particular scheme and its possibility of closing off further development of the site behind. Can I have a show of hands for that, please? Thank you. Okay, and I thought this would be uncontroversial up to this point. Right, okay, coming up, we've lost it again. I know, so I need to. There we go, right, okay, so. Oh, come on, up here, right. Okay, all right, so this is our final application notified in advance. It's SMD 2026-0009. Mr. and Mrs. Hudson of 12 Moorlands Heights, Biddulph. The proposal is an extension and alterations to existing garage to form a home office and an extension to the existing dropped curb. There is no pre-application advice. It is not in the green belt. It's no BNG because it's a householder application. It is as you can see from the plan here, it is a modest extension to the existing garage. It's existing garage, modest extension to the existing garage to create a home office extending the dropped curb to access the enlarged parking area, extended drop curb here, to access the extended parking area. The walls will be facing brick to match the existing. The roof will be grey concrete tiles to match the existing with an EDPM rubber area here of a flat roof with no details of the windows or doors. There's no design and access statement provided, no additional documents. It impacts only potentially in terms of design and public realm car parking and movement. I would recommend no adverse comments on the grounds that it is a pitched roof to the frontage, which matches the main dwelling. The materials will match the existing dwelling, and the extended drop curb will facilitate off-road parking to compensate for the loss of the garage parking space. Do I have any? Councillor Rogers.
Yes, finally, it being extended parking and home office, is it just a personal office or is it somewhere where clients can visit, etc.?
There is no statement as to that, no information with regard to that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Are we happy to send it through with no adverse comments? Thank you. Can I have a show of hands, please, for that? Thank you very much. Right. So, moving on to consider supplementary applications received since the agenda was received. Now, you may or may not have received this. It should have been sent out to you fairly late on. We have an application that arrived midday today, so fairly late up to the meeting, from a Mr. and Mrs. Webb for the land between Hot Lane and Rudyard Road. Let me just close that one down. And all right.
0537.
Yeah. So it's SMD 2025-0537. It is permission in principle for the construction of up to 9 homes. The permission in principle is to construct, there is no pre-application advice. It is in the green belt. Let me go and find this one. Interactive planning.
Got to comment on this by.
No, basically, the reason I'm bringing this to you is because we do not have to make a comment on this tonight. However, the closing date for comments is the day after our next meeting. In light of the fact that this is potentially a fairly controversial proposal, I wanted to give you effectively a heads up now in order to give you plenty of time to think about this before the next meeting and to look into the details that are on the site. If I can find where we are on here.
Okay.
Right.
You don't garage. You.
Right, Councillor Jones, I believe you were missing this. Basically, what we're looking at is a. Let me find my other. This one, right? Okay, it is a proposal for outlined for permission in principle for 9 dwellings on a section of road, and it's easiest to find it on here. Here, the Parklands. Effectively, it's opposite the Parklands. It's this stripe of land here, which is currently in the green belt. Okay, so it is in the green belt. It's saying I've no idea whether BNG will be applicable because it's an outline permission, but I would expect BNG to be applicable. However, there are no details of the property to be constructed. The planning statement here, and I would recommend that everyone goes away and reads this in some detail prior to the next meeting. Essentially, it is a building in the green belt. Let me show it. So essentially, the argument is that the green belt is in fact grey belt because it does not make a contribution to purposes A, B, or D of the green belt as set out in the paragraph 143 of the framework. And those particular purposes of the green belt are to check unrestricted sprawl of large urban built up areas, to prevent neighbouring towns merging into one another, and to preserve the setting and special character of historic towns. This site, according to the application, does not make a contribution towards those 3 purposes of greenbelt. The development of the site would not fundamentally undermine the purposes of the remaining greenbelt across the whole area of the plan. They're also specifying that the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, as there is a demonstrable unmet need for this type of development, and the development would be in a sustainable location with regard to paragraphs 110 and 115 of the framework. There are many potential neighbourhood plan policies that could be impacted: natural features, urban edge, housing, infill housing, sustainable drainage, design, and public realm car parking. We can't make any judgment on those because there are no details of the plans. However, those are potentially of concern. At this point, the recommendation is that the decision is called into the planning committee by the ward council if he's happy to do that, as it's of significant local interest, but deferred to the planning officers. Obviously, greenbelt regulations is what's at stake here. The concern here is that this is the first grey belt application in Biddulph citing the tilted balance and for lack of 5-year housing supply. So I think we need to discuss it at length at the next meeting, but I wanted you all to be aware of it prior to that. I've got Councillor Jones and Councillor Hawley. I don't think I need to have too much discussion on this one, but as ward councillors.
I'm not going to speak long. Neighbourhood plan, not neighbourhood plan, local plan. Yeah. Why did we spend all those hours on the local plan to iron out things like this? There was a proposal in for a 50 dwelling estate by the same applicant, I think, on that particular field. And to say this doesn't come, it's grey belt because of all the reasons you rang at. If it's grey belt and any piece of green field is grey now, if we can build there, we can build on any bit of ground that touches against an existing development in Biddulph Moor. It will set a precedent, and before you know it, will be like Congleton. The sad part is with the changes to the national planning recommendations, I suspect it will go through. And I think it's tragic. Personally, I think it's tragic. It will set precedent. If that gets approved, the next one will be Chapel Lane.
That is my very logic behind bringing it to the making
Yeah.
of it now rather than it coming to the next meeting with only 1 day deadline to.
Yeah, my views are set in stone on this, and if I'd had a day's notice, well, I've only just had 10 minutes notice. I don't need weeks to think about it. Thank you, Chair, for that. But I suspect it'll get approval.
So, Councillor Jones,
I will be calling it in.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, can we note that? Okay, thank you, Councillor Hawley, and then I think this was a heads up for advance notice.
Yeah, basically it comes back to it. I mean, this piece of land, when we went through with the local plan, it was in there as an option, and effectively with all the land that was around it, that is only one slice of what was actually proposed. And what they were looking at before was about 45, which was to build another housing estate on Biddulph Moor. This is just basically a start of what they're after.
What I'm showing you here, Councillor, this is from the report that's been submitted with it, is this is actually identifying the draft potential allocations, which is this site plus an additional bit there and another bit here with a reserve site here, as you say, to provide a very significant housing development. So again, I think there are a number of concerns that people have with this. I want to give you advance notice so we can come to the next meeting fully prepared, but we will need to submit our recommendation to the
if it goes through, all those others will go through. All of Hopkiller Farm, big chunk on Chapel Lane.
Councillor Jones, I think we all know what's happened in Congleton. We all know what's happening at the moment in Macclesfield. Therefore, I'm bringing this to everyone's attention in preparation for the next meeting, for which we may need a bit more time.
Just like,
Councillor Yates.
On this, the Congleton developments weren't in Greenbelt.
Well, it isn't. Yeah, Greenbelt doesn't exist outside area. Yes, it's just farmland. It's not the Greenbelt. It's the level of unchecked development, I think, has been the concern to residents. Right. Anyway.
Just a quick one. Did you say 9 proposed?
9.
Okay, thank you.
There's no details, therefore we can't make any comment as to what the layout looks like, what sort of properties they are. It's effectively a plan commission in principle for a development on that area. So as I say, I think it's testing the water, as Councillor Jones has alluded to, in terms of the other areas that we have. So we're calling it in. We'll consider it at the next meeting in some detail. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the rest of the agenda. Number 59, we've had no decisions have been received.
No, tell it was Christmas.
Because it was Christmas and they cancelled the November meeting. And we had no appeals. Therefore, slightly later, 6:33, I now declare the meeting closed. And I look forward to everyone's contributions next month. Thank you to those joining us online.
Great.